And I still remember when I was a kid growing up in Venezuela in the 80s. So I was playing at the time some of the most exciting video games at the time. Perhaps not as exciting as today's, let's say, video games. Well, my mother was actually using their hair dryer. So as a reference, out of the sudden, my Nintendo lost power due to a breaker tripping in the electric panel within the house. So was obviously I lost connection. My epic video game battle was over, and my game was interrupted. That day, I was, although I was frustrated, I was also intrigued and fascinated about electricity, and I decided I wanted to know more about the mysteries behind electric power. Good evening, Madame Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. Tonight, you're going to learn a little bit more about myself and my passion for electric power. I'm going to share some of the insights about why I decided to become an electrical engineer, and I'll give you a glimpse of the power of electricity from my perspective and from my experience, and how I think it changed lives and it helps make a world more inclusive. It really helped us from different perspectives. So I'll start with a story from my, let's say, childhood. When I was in high school, I was always passionate about science and technology. And during my early days, I knew I wanted to become an engineer. I wasn't sure what type of engineer I wanted to be. So I started doing research. I started trying to understand how engineering makes an impact. And I was trying to understand all the different disciplines, uh, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering. And I got fascinated about the power grid. Actually, I have a question for you here in the audience. Did you know that the electric grid is the world's largest machine? Very interesting, right? And it is. It is the world's largest machine. So that day, I knew I wanted to be an electrical engineer. So very essential. It's the backbone of our society, of our lives. And I'm going to share a little bit more on how exactly how that plays. More often, we think about engineering. When we think about engineering, we think of buildings, spaceships, towers, bridges, but sometimes we don't see the elements behind all those tangible components, right? So electricity is one of those examples. Electricity is behind everything, yet we don't think about the importance and actually how it functions, how it operates. So think about it. When we start our day having breakfast, we take a quick shower, and we rush to get to work. We're not mindful about all the different elements and all the infrastructure that is needed in our house to get all the things that we do. We flip basically a light switch and we expect the lights to come on. We basically power up the computer, the TV, and we do it as something very, very usual, very normal. When you open the fridge, we expect the cold to hit your face and your food items to be preserved. We expect the microwave, the oven to function properly. But what happens when the power goes out? So that's an experience that I think most of us have experienced in the past, and it's actually very frustrating. Sometimes it could be even matter of death of life. Think about it in the middle of the winter, perhaps if you relied on electric heating only and you don't have that access, so it could be something very inconvenient. So electricity, again, is something we take for granted. And when you think about it, maybe some of our grandparents, they didn't have access to electricity. And it's very interesting because unfortunately, even today, there are 1.2 billion people in developing countries and they don't have access to electricity. So that's very shocking. They still use oil lamps. They perhaps have an ice box in which they have the food. They try to preserve the food. And this is today, right? So it's actually very shocking. And the reality is that the lack of access to electricity can hamper development. It affects everything from people ability to learn to the creation of wealth, enterprises, and provision of public services like healthcare. So it's crucial, it's essential. Actually, the Nations has a significant goal of countries achieving universal access to electricity by 2030. So it's a very aggressive goal considering that today, 2021, also going to 2021 in a few months, 1.2 billion people don't, they don't have access to electricity. So it's actually very aggressive and very ambitious goal. Hopefully, we're getting there when the time is right. So according to multiple studies and the World Economic Forum, there are different elements about electricity and the benefits in those households. One of them is kids have the opportunity to spend more time studying. So this study shows that kids with access to electricity spend almost about an hour in terms of study time after nightfall. So that's actually very, I think, it's very beneficial. And most frequently, people with access to electricity, they obviously have access to information. Some of the electrical appliances that people in developing countries they first get when they get access to electricity are obviously TVs, radio, and mobile phones. So in today's, let's say, technology era, it's not only all the elements like the comfort elements like food, like temperature, like those essential elements, but it's also access to information. So if you think even this meeting without power, we wouldn't be able to have this meeting, this remote meeting here. So that's just an example of those benefits. Another interesting fact is when you look at the time that people with access to electricity stay awake, so they actually are awake one more hour a day compared to people that they don't have access to electricity. So obviously we have access to lighting, entertainment devices, and therefore we have at least one more hour a day, let's say, of time being awake. So that's something that one way or the other, that's one of the advantages from that perspective. Now, electricity has historically been an enabler for social development, welfare, equality, improved healthcare, and its role is increasing every single day. When you look at oil and gas and fossil fuels, they're actually going in, they're actually decreasing in terms of importance, and renewable energy electrification is gaining more and more importance. So as I said before, is becoming the backbone of the energy supply worldwide, and it's actually the infrastructure of everything we do. So everything we do, when you think about it, relies on electricity. So these advances offer not only the hope of globalization, but also inclusion with the purpose of providing, let's say, quality of life for all, for everyone, not only for some people or for most of the people with access to electricity. I would like to close this speech also by sharing my purpose in life, or one of my main purposes, and it is to help build a future in which mankind has been able to manage to live in harmony with nature and actually leveraging technologies to enable decarbonize, decentralize, and digitalize energy resources that will help us achieve sustainability. Thank you, Madame Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. Thank you.